Welcome to our podcast. Hey,
Hey, Mom. Welcome to our yet to be named podcast. We're kind of still waiting on one of us to come up with something creative and funny for the name, but we wanted to get this podcast rolling and get started talking with you guys.
sometimes you just have to take imperfect action, right? And we've been talking about this podcast for a really long time. And finally, we decided, you know what, we just need to get on and hit record. And we're kind of giving ourselves a month to figure out the logistics. So we'll be releasing this, by the time you hear this, we'll be about a month out. But we want to start this podcast because we've spent a lot of time talking about our relationship, the relationship that I have with siblings, which we'll tell you a little more about that and what that looks like, but why we feel our relationship is solid and strong as the mom of a 20 something and Cayd being a 20 something. We are
Hmm.
not perfect by any means, and that's not why we're putting this out there, but we definitely just want to kind of share our journey and talk about a lot of the topics that are sensitive to parents and to adult children once they hit their 20s. So we'll address things we'll talk about what maybe happened when the kids were younger, through their teen years, but mostly the focus is about the relationship with a mom and a child in their 20s. So Kate, do you have anything to add as to why we started the podcast?
I mean, kind of like you said, there's just kind of a lot to navigate, I think, as a lot of people know, between one, just a parent and a child relationship, but especially once you have adult children, the dynamic changes, life situation changes, being around my friends who are similar ages and watching their relationships with their parents and seeing how our relationship has kind of changed throughout the years. I just think it'd be good to kind of talk about some topics, get some conversation started, and that sort of stuff.
Great, thanks, Cayd. We do have a long list of topics that we've already generated, but first of all, we wanted to talk about kind of who this podcast is for. So, we did look at what's out there in the market right now, and there really isn't any podcast aimed at both the parents and the kids. So we were talking about who this podcast might be for, and Cayd said to me, "Well, I think our listeners will be anywhere between 18 and 60." And I was like, 18 and 60? That's a really, really wide age group. But then when we got to talking about it and thinking about it, Cayd said, I think it would be great for kids. And Cayd, I'll let you talk to that as soon as I talk about the
Hmm.
parent side. But then I also know a lot of parents in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s that are starting to parent kids in middle school, kids in high school, and kids as young adults. And yes, it's not too late, even if your kids are already adults. So when we talked about people at the higher end of the spectrum, I am 55 years old, and I have three children in their 20s. But then there's also sometimes grandparents raising kids and kids in their 20s. So that's why we kind of talked about the 18 to 60 group. I obviously represent the parent side of that and also the upper end kind of our podcast target market. But Kate, talk a little bit about why you thought it would be important for us to kind of target those kids as young as 18 and maybe even a little
Hmm.
younger if they're in high school.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not necessarily a strict 18. I think it kind of just ranges from that young adult phase, late teenager phase to really whenever. But like I kind of said earlier, just seeing my friends who have different relationships with their parents and what that looks like and how sometimes it's hard to navigate. Okay, well, now I'm legally an adult, but I still live at home, or my parents still help pay for my bills, or my parents cut me off when I turned 18. I think there's so many different situations that happen with kids. And kind of like I said, your 20s are such a time of change in your life. I just entered my 20s, starting to be 21 here in the next month. So I think that there's a lot of changes. You might be finishing school, you're starting your career, you might be moving out. There's a whole bunch of different changes. You're starting a new relationship. There's all sorts of things that can be going on. So I think it'd be beneficial for kids my age, kids older, kids younger to kind of see what our relationship is like, maybe learn a couple things. And like you said earlier, we're not perfect. We're not the perfect example of 20 something and a parent relationship. But I do think that we've put in some effort to work on our relationship and be where we're at now. So I think that that will be beneficial for the younger audience. And I think that that kind of goes into the purpose of this podcast is just we want to help people from my age all the way up to your age and anyone in between, anyone older, anyone younger, just to kind of help better understand the dynamic of parent and children relationships and how that changes and evolves over time.
Because it definitely changes and evolves over time, and I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people my age sometimes struggle with how to release what before was a responsibility and what you feel to be a control over your child's life, and allowing them to take the reins and live their life on their own, but yet deal with your own
Mm-hmm.
emotions of having to let go. Because you spend a lot of years, right, having to
Mm-hmm.
keep your kids safe and try to make sure that they're able to handle the things that are coming to them and teaching them to be good citizens. So, yeah, what the podcast is about, kind of the purpose, is to really hopefully generate some conversation, if that's possible, between kids and parents, because
Mm-hmm.
again, it's never too late to build that relationship. So whether it's kids learning that maybe their parent has a different viewpoint because they hear
Mm-hmm.
what I have to say about a topic, or a parent maybe considering their relationship and how they're approaching it with their child differently because of something Cayd says. We also plan to bring on maybe some friends of Cayd's, his siblings, his stepdad, some friends of mine, potentially some authors or people who are experts in the field about certain topics. This podcast is really for you guys. And so one of the things we do plan to do is a question and answer type of podcast once every so often, depending on how many questions come in. But we want to make sure that we are giving you what you're interested in. And so while we have a long list of topics that we'd like to talk about that we feel have affected our relationship or we've had to navigate, I think it's really important to remember that this is a judgment-free zone, and we're not telling you what to do. We're just talking about how we did it and what worked and didn't work for us, and
Mm-hmm.
hoping that then the purpose is met, which is improving, hopefully, your relationship or your understanding with either your child or your parent. So
Yep.
that's kind of what we're looking at for the purpose. What we hope you'll get out of the podcast is comfort in knowing you're not alone in dealing with this, a place to just come back and listen. We don't plan for this podcast to be an hour or an hour and a half long. We want it to be 30 minutes consumable, the drive to work, or when you're working out on the treadmill. That's when we kind of want you to be able to listen to this. It's not going to take up a big chunk of your day, but it's just short and sweet and full of stories. We've got lots of stories to tell. So
Uh-huh.
we will use those. You will see that we are authentic. We are human. Sometimes we're not going to talk about things as they happen live. Sometimes we're going to wait and talk about them from a place of healing. So please, understand that that is also true. So with that, Cayd, why don't you tell us kind of who you are and what brought you here?
For sure. So, like I said, freshly 20 something, about to turn 21. And I think kind of just the reason of being here is, like I said, understanding that we're not experts. No one's perfect. No one has everything down. But I think that we can start some good conversations and learn something. Either when we might learn things along the way about each other. You might say something that I didn't know you felt a certain way about, or I might say things. But yeah, I don't know. I just am, like I said, a young 20 something figuring out life for the first time. Grateful to have a good relationship with my mom, and that's been helpful to me navigate that. Starting in my career, graduating school, potentially moving to new cities, things like that are all coming up in my life. And I think that they would be great topics to get things started.
And so one of the reasons we talked about starting the podcast now is, like Cayd alluded to, like he is looking at what bigger city he might want to move to. We are currently in Wichita, Kansas. Cayd is actually dog sitting today. So
Mm-hmm.
the background you see today will probably not always be the background you see.
Uh-huh.
But with him moving out and moving to a different city, that will be very different for us. Cayd, just to give people an idea, tell them a little bit about, what you do with your days, kind of what are the
Yeah.
things you're doing right now, so people get an idea of what your life looks like.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, my life pretty much is the same day in and day out, kind of a pretty good routine setup. I still live at home, which, like I said, helps kind of with our dynamic of having a good parent-child relationship. But, I'm really big on working out. Running, I've been super into, just finished a marathon in the fall, running a half marathon this spring. So that's something I'm really passionate about. I currently work as a consumer loan officer for a credit union. I work from home, so that again kind of plays into it. I'm already living at home and working at home. So kind of understanding that dynamic of, and again, this is one of the topics we'll get into, but understanding the relationship of having an adult child who lives at home and what that looks like and boundaries and things like that. But, just enjoy spending some time with my friends, looking at moving now that I've graduated college, just graduated in December. So yeah, that is kind of where my life is headed, what I've been up to on the daily basis. Like my mom said, I'm dog sitting right now. That's kind of something I do on the side just to make a little extra money and spend some more time with dogs, which I'm really passionate about for sure.
And it gives him a little time away from mom and his own dogs here at home. So we have 3 dogs here at home, 2 beagles, which Cayd plans to take with him when he moves, because through COVID and the pandemic, they became extremely close. And so he can't imagine life without them. So because he's taking them, mom got a new puppy. So we also have a baby Cavapoo living in the house that we've really been enjoying.
Mm-hmm.
Cayd and I both work from home. And so I am a life coach, and I specialize on helping people go through transitions, primarily women, but it is all transitions. So I have spoken to someone as young as 21 who's looking at making a pivot in the career that they would like to take already at 21 and kind of what that looks like, all the way to some people who have had to navigate losing a spouse in their older years and what that might look like. A lot of times it's job changes, it might be a divorce, all topics that we will probably touch on at some point in time, because we've had a lot of pivots and transitions in our life. And so how we've navigated those, I think, is helpful. But because we're both at home right now, we call upstairs HQ. So there's 2 bedrooms and a bathroom up here. My office is in 1 bedroom. Cayd's office is in his bedroom. So that's been really fun for us to kind of, hey, I'm going up to HQ, but it has really helped us to kind of bond and have that. Cayd made a very different choice about how he wanted to go through college than his siblings did. And so that story will come out too. But he did choose to stay at home, and we'll talk about how that has worked for us or not worked for us. I used to be in corporate America and made the decision last July that I was going to go all in on my coaching business. So that is currently where I am at. And you'll hear a little bit probably about our unique journeys when we'll talk about jobs, we'll talk about what careers look like, all of that, and how it pertains to your relationship. So in future episodes, I think what you can expect is to hear a lot about our journey. So we originally are from Minnesota. When Cayd was in 1st grade, we moved to Wichita. We've been here about 14 years now, I think, if my math is right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll talk a little bit about those transitions, what that looked like. Cayd's dad and I got divorced in 2019. So what did that look like? He's got 1 sibling living in Washington State, another one that lives just south of us about 30 minutes. And so what those relationships look like. So you'll get to learn a lot about us. Again, we are very open. We are very honest about what happened in our life and what's going to happen going forward. And part of that is we want you to know that whatever you're going through, it is okay. And you will make it through. You will make it to the other side. So that is a hope that we hope you gain from here.
Mm-hmm.
In our future episodes, you can expect us to be honest with you. You can expect us to be consistent. You can expect us to be funny, probably because Cayd's super funny, but occasionally I say something funny. But again, the question and answer. So if you have a topic you'd like to hear us talk about, if you have something specific that you're struggling with, I think it would be great for you to reach out on DMs, reach out on messaging, and let us know what you would like. But again, we will be consistent. This podcast will have a name by the time we launch it, so you can expect that. It will also be accessible anywhere you listen to podcasts. There will be a podcast show notes page on my website, which is marcihawkinson.com. And the podcast will be there. We will also feature it on socials. So both Cayd's socials and mine. And so we'll have links to all of that you will be able to see. So we're, like I said, figuring out the tech, right? Cayd's a little more techie than I am when it comes to that stuff. So we're going step by step through. Show will have an opener. It will have music. I don't know where we're getting it from. If you have any great ideas, contact me, let me know. It will also have a close, but we're super excited to figure this out. And we will be honest about the journey throughout the whole thing. So anything else you would like them to know, Cayd?
I think kind of like you said, we're all kind of along the journey together. It's not just going to be us pushing out episodes and, just talking about whatever we want. We do want to hear from you guys and, talk about struggles you're currently going through or have gone through, or maybe you're preparing to go through something, a big life change is coming. So like I said, just knowing that this is going to be one big conversation and that there's so many layers and conversations to have all within one topic. But yeah, like she said, marcihawkinson.com. There'll be a link to the podcast there. You can watch all future episodes, all past episodes. It'll be on all streaming platforms, all of our social medias, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks for showing up from dog sitting with me today, Cayd. Everybody, hope you come back next Monday. We'll be releasing on Mondays is the plan for right now. So we hope you come back next Monday to listen. Love you, Cayd.
Yep. Love you too, Mom.
We'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye everyone.